The salty air of Tortuga clung to Captain Elias Thorne, a scent of rot and rum that was all too familiar. He had sailed these waters for a decade, his cutlass a blur, his reputation a whisper on the wind. But the life of a pirate was a young man's game, and at 32 Elias was ready for a quieter shore. He had spent the last of his doubloons not on plunder, but on a ramshackle tavern nestled on the island's muddy waterfront, a place called the Salty Siren. The purchase was finalized with a handshake and a shared bottle of cheap liquor, the deed a scrawled promise on a grimy parchment. The tavern itself was a monument to disrepair. The roof sagged like a tired old sail, the floorboards groaned with every step, and the air was thick with the ghosts of spilled ale and forgotten sorrows. As Elias moved behind the long, scarred bar, the wood felt strange beneath his fingertips, a world away from the familiar feel of a ship's wheel. He ran a hand along the dusty surface, imagining a future where he served grog instead of causing chaos. A sudden, sharp thud from the storage room behind the bar startled him. He drew his pistol, the movement and instinct born of years of peril. Slowly, he pushed open the creaking door. The room was dark, lit only by a single grimy porthole that let in a shaft of weak afternoon light. In that dim light, he saw a figure huddled in the corner. Not a ghost, but a woman, her hands bound, a gag tied tightly across her mouth. Her eyes, wide with a mixture of fear and defiance, were the color of the deep, clear sea. Elias's pistol remained leveled as he approached. The woman flinched, but held his gaze. She was not a tavern girl. Her dress, though soiled, was of finer cloth than any he had seen on Tortuga. Her hair, the color of spun gold, was in disarray, and a fading bruise colored her cheekbone. He lowered his weapon, a sense of protectiveness he hadn't felt in years stirring in his chest. "Who put you here?" he asked, his voice a low growl. She only shook her head, unable to speak. Elias knelt and carefully, so as not to spook her, untied the gag. The moment it was free, she gasped, a small, pained sound. "My name is Isolde," she whispered, her voice surprisingly soft and clear. The men who owned this place, they kept me here. They said I was to be a bride, a prize to be sold to the highest bidder." The words struck Elias like a broadside. He had bought this tavern to escape the lawless life, only to find himself entangled in a new kind of cruelty. He saw the desperation and the silent plea in her eyes. This wasn't just a discovery, it was a responsibility. He cut her bonds, and her wrists, raw and red, were a testament to her struggle. "You're safe now," he said, the words feeling clumsy on his tongue. "This tavern is mine. They're gone." Isolde looked at him, her beautiful eyes clouded with a mix of relief and suspicion. "And who are you?" "Captain Elias Thorne," he said. A name that once struck fear now felt like an old, heavy coat. "But you can call me Elias, and from now on this is your home too. You are no one's prize. You are free." Her name was Isolde, a name that resonated with a quiet strength. Over the next few days, as Elias began the arduous task of restoring the tavern, Isolde helped him. She cleaned, she mended, and she brought an order to the chaos that his life had become. She spoke of her past in fragments, a privileged life on a distant island, a father who had been a wealthy merchant, and a kidnapping that had shattered her world. Elias, in turn, shared parts of his own life, not the brutal tales of plunder, but the quiet moments at sea, the simple beauty of a sunset over the open ocean. They found a rhythm together. Elias was the brawn, fixing the structural problems and hauling heavy barrels, while Isolde was the heart, bringing a sense of warmth and home to the cold, empty rooms. He saw her smile for the first time when she arranged wildflowers in a cracked jug on the bar. It was a simple, small act, but it lit up the whole tavern and surprisingly his own weary soul. Their shared purpose forged a bond deeper than words. They were two lost souls, one escaping a life of violence, the other escaping a life of captivity, finding an unexpected harbor in a dilapidated tavern on a lawless island. Elias began to see that his freedom wasn't just about escaping his past, but about building a new future. A future that now, inextricably, included Isolde. But their newfound peace was fragile. One evening, a group of sailors staggered into the tavern, their leader a hulking brute named Black Jack. His face scarred and his gaze predatory. His eyes fell on Isolde, and a cruel grin spread across his face. "Well, well," he sneered, his voice a gravelly rumble. "Look what we have here, the prize that slipped through our fingers, the runaway bride." The air in the tavern turned to ice. Elias stood behind the bar, his hand resting on the hilt of his cutlass, his gaze as hard and cold as steel. The confrontation he had hoped to avoid was now knocking at his door. He had bought this tavern for peace, but it seemed fate had other plans. His past was not ready to release him, and his future, a future with Isolde, was under a direct threat. He knew, with a certainty that chilled him to the bone, that the tranquility he had found with her was not a destination, but merely the beginning of a new and perhaps greater conflict. The tension in the salty siren was a living thing, thick and suffocating. Black Jack, with his cruel grin and menacing presence, was a ghost from Isolde's past and a threat to Elias's future. He leaned against the bar, his gaze raking over Isolde, a possessive and predatory glint in his eyes. "She was a valuable commodity, Thorne." Blackjack spat, his voice low and dangerous. "You can't just buy a tavern and claim her as your own. She was promised to another, a very rich man who pays well for what he wants." Elias stepped from behind the bar, his hand still on the hilt of his cutlass. "She is a person, not a thing to be sold. This is my place now. She is under my protection." A snort of derision escaped Blackjack's lips. "Protection? From me? We both know what you are, Thorne. A man who lives by the blade. But I have more men, and I have a contract you can't fight." The mention of a contract, a legal document, even in this lawless land, was a new wrinkle. It wasn't just a pirate's threat, it was a promise backed by power. Elias's pirate instinct screamed for a fight, but his newfound sense of responsibility held him back. A brawl here would endanger Isolde and ruin the life he was trying to build. He had to think, not just react. "Then go to your contract and leave us be," Elias said, his voice a low, steady rumble. Blackjack laughed, a sound like grinding rocks. "I don't think so. I'm here to collect, and I'm not leaving without her." Isolde, standing rigid behind the bar, her knuckles white, stepped forward. "I will not go with you. I will not be sold like chattel." Blackjack's eyes narrowed. "You have no choice, girl. Your father, a well-respected merchant, owes a substantial debt. He sold you to settle it. He's already given his word. You are a debt paid, not a runaway bride." The revelation hit Elias like a sucker punch. Isolde hadn't just been kidnapped. She had been betrayed by her own father. The weight of her past was heavier than he had ever imagined. He looked at her, seeing the pain and the betrayal in her eyes, and a cold, hard resolve settled in his heart. He moved, not with the reckless abandon of a pirate, but with the calculated grace of a seasoned warrior. He drew his cutlass in a flash of steel, the sound a sharp, lethal whisper. The other sailors in the tavern fell silent, recognizing the danger. "You came for a fight, Jack," Elias said, his voice flat and deadly, "and a fight you will get, but not with her, with me." Blackjack drew his own blade, a heavy, rusted sword, and their duel began. The clash of steel filled the small tavern, a violent metallic symphony against the backdrop of splintered wood and terrified patrons. Elias fought with a new purpose, not for plunder or reputation, but for something far more valuable: Isolde's freedom. He had spent a lifetime fighting for himself, but now he was fighting for her. He parried Blackjack's wild swings, his own movements precise and economical. Every strike was a statement, every parry a promise. He was not the rogue pirate of his past. He was a man defending his home, his sanctuary, and the woman who had come to mean everything to him. Isolde watched in silent terror, her heart a frantic drum against her ribs. She saw not just a pirate fighting, but a man risking everything for her. It was a kind of heroism she had only read about in stories. She saw the years of experience in his movements, the controlled power in his strikes, and the grim determination on his face. This was not a performance. It was a desperate struggle for their future. Elias's plan was not to kill Blackjack, but to disarm him, to make it clear that he was outmatched. With a swift, fluid motion, he feinted high and then struck low, catching Blackjack's wrist. The rusted sword clattered to the floor, and Blackjack howled in pain, his hand now useless. "Get out," Elias said, his cutlass tip pointed at Blackjack's throat. "And don't come back. The next time I won't be so merciful." Defeated and humiliated, Blackjack and his crew slunk out of the tavern. The silence they left behind was filled with the frantic gasps of the remaining patrons and the soft sound of a dropped cutlass. Elias turned to Isolde, his breath coming in ragged heaves. He saw the relief, the awe, and something else in her eyes, a deep, profound admiration. She approached him slowly, her hand reaching out to touch the grime on his cheek. You fought for me. Always." Elias said, his voice hoarse. "Always." In that moment, a new kind of bond was forged between them, born of conflict and solidified by trust. They had faced a storm, not of wind and rain, but of betrayal and greed, and they had weathered it together. The tavern was still standing, their love was still a budding flower, and the world outside was still a dangerous place. But for now, they had each other. As the sun set, painting the sky in fiery hues of orange and purple, Elias and Isolde stood together, a silent promise hanging in the air between them. The pirates who had once owned this tavern had left her behind, but he, a buccaneer who had bought it by chance, had found a future worth fighting for. And he knew, with a certainty that was as unshakable as the sea itself, that this was just the beginning. The victory over Blackjack brought a fragile peace to the tavern, but Elias knew it wouldn't last. The story of the pirate-turned owner protecting a woman spread, making them a target. Isolde and Elias continued to build their life, their bond deepening daily. She brought grace to the tavern, he brought pragmatism, and together they forged a partnership built on mutual respect and a shared dream of a peaceful life. One rainy evening, as they sat by the fire, Isolde expressed her fears. "What will we do, Elias? They will come back." He took her hand. "Then we will be ready. We'll fight them or we'll sail, whatever it takes. I will not let them take you." He then proposed an escape, a hidden sloop to sail to a new island. Isolde considered it, but was torn between leaving their sanctuary and living in constant fear. Elias reassured her. "The tavern is just wood and stone. The real treasure is you and our future together." The next day, a portly merchant flanked by Blackjack stormed into the tavern. He held a contract, claiming Isolde was his property, sold to him by her father to settle a debt. Elias stepped forward, his hand on his cutlass. "She is a woman, not a thing to be sold. This contract means nothing here. She belongs to no one but herself." Isolde, stepping from behind him, spoke with a new resolve. "I will not go with you. I am not my father's to sell. Elias is the only one who has ever truly protected me." The merchant, enraged, ordered his men to seize them. A fierce brawl erupted. Outnumbered, Elias fought fiercely, and Isolde, with a surprising flash of courage, smashed a rum bottle over an attacker's head. The merchant, startled and flustered by their combined defiance, realized the fight was not worth the trouble. He had a reputation to uphold, and a bloody brawl with a determined pirate would not serve him. He and his men retreated, their defeat a final victory for Elias and Isolde. Standing in the silence of their battered tavern, unharmed, their eyes met. They hadn't needed to sail away. They had built their own sanctuary. Elias took her hands. "You're free, Isolde, truly free." "And so are you, Elias," she whispered, a tear of joy on her cheek. "You found your home, and I found mine, right here." The tavern was no longer just a business. It was a symbol of their resilience and a testament to their love. A place where a buccaneer found more than he bargained for, and a woman found more than just a rescuer. They had found each other, and together they had built their quiet, honest haven. If you enjoyed this story, be sure to hit that subscribe button to catch more tales of adventure and romance.